The final lens that we'll be discussing during today's presentation is proximity. Our two key objectives are to, number one, understand proximity in Montgomery County Public Schools and why it's so important, and number two, to understand issues of nearest home school assignments, or, in other words, to understand how often students are zoned to a school that is not the closest school to their home. We're discussing this because reducing the distance and time traveled decreases the burden on students and families of traveling to school, and it also decreases the expenditure of resources for getting students to and from school. So when we talk about proximity, we're talking primarily about how students are traveling to school, what the travel patterns are, what kind of barriers they're facing to getting to school, and in this presentation focusing in particular on what percentage of students are able to attend their nearest school. We know that across the county, for middle schools, 43% of middle school students do not attend their nearest school. That means 43% of middle school students who are not in any specialized programs or language immersion programs and choose to attend their nearest zone school are not zoned to the school that is closest to their home. Once again, we're going to focus in on one particular cluster. This doesn't mean that we're focusing in particular on that cluster in the report, but it does mean that this cluster is a useful demonstrative example to help us understand how we look at issues of proximity and travel distance within clusters. So we'll be talking about Walter Johnson today. When we look at middle schools in Walter Johnson, we understand that the cluster average of students who cannot attend or who are not assigned to their closest middle school is 38%. Within the cluster, the highest percentage of students who do not attend their closest school is at North Bethesda Middle School, where 70% of middle school students do not attend the closest school to their place of residence. On the other hand is Tilden Middle School, where only 2% of students do not attend their closest middle school. That means 98% of students at Tilden Middle School live closer to Tilden than any other middle school, while 30% of students at North Bethesda Middle School live closer to North Bethesda than any other middle school. If we look at the map of this cluster, we see that this is due in part to the boundaries of the cluster itself, meaning that although many students within their cluster are zoned to that cluster's middle school, they actually live much closer to a middle school in another cluster or in another school zone, and that is due to the way that boundaries are currently drawn. When we zoom out to the district-wide level and look at elementary schools, we see that the average percentage of students who do not attend their closest elementary school is 37%, meaning that elementary school students who are not enrolled in a specialized program or language immersion program and choose to attend the closest zone school are not assigned to the school closest to their home. If we look at the range of schools, we know that there is at least one elementary school in the county where 94% of students do not attend the closest elementary school to their home. So, only 6% of students at that elementary school are attending the closest school to home. In another school, we have an average of 0%, meaning each one of those students in that one elementary school are able to attend the school closest to them and don't have to pass that closest school to attend another school. When we look at the middle school level, we know, again, that 45% of middle school students who are not enrolled in a language immersion or other specialized program and choose to attend their closest zone school still have to attend a school that is farther away than the closest middle school to their home. We have a significant range of middle schools, with one school where 100% of students are able to attend their closest school, and another school in the county where 0% of students are zoned to their closest school. This occurs because of the way that boundaries are drawn around particular neighborhoods, sometimes preventing certain residences from attending their closest school because it is in a different zone or a different cluster. At the high school level, 38% of students do not attend their closest school, and we have a range of 76% of students at one high school who do not attend their closest school, and another high school where 0% of students do not attend their closest school. Once again, in the examples where high percentages of students do not attend their closest school, it is often because of the way that boundaries are drawn, preventing students from attending their closest school because they are not zoned to that school or do not live within the geography of that school's cluster. I recommend that you take a close look at each of these maps to start understanding the adjacencies of these schools, schools where high percentages of students do not attend their closest school versus schools where low percentages of students do not attend their closest school. And in many cases, at the elementary school, middle school, and high school level, these schools are located directly adjacent to each other. Now that we've discussed school proximity and the percentage of students who are able to travel to their nearest school, what feedback do you have for us about proximity to schools as a part of this boundary analysis? What else should we include in the analysis when we talk about school proximity, travel time, travel patterns? Now we like to talk about the intersection of our three major lenses: utilization, diversity, and proximity. Since we've had the chance to review the key factors and ways of analyzing these three lenses, we'd like to talk a little bit more about how they overlap and intersect. What are the most important things to keep in mind about the way that these three issues, school utilization or capacity, student body diversity or dissimilarity, and proximity to schools, are interconnected? Is there anything else that you want to share about these three lenses or about the overall analysis? Is there anything else you need clarified about the boundary analysis process? Thank you for your feedback.